Welcome back to Rob Sandstrom's Designs YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to get right into the fifth in a series of videos where I talk about applying a sign to a cookie. So we started out with finding the center of that cookie so that our design would fit on it just right. Then we moved on to how we would actually do that design on the cookie in the VCarve software. We talked about surfacing the cookie so it would accept an epoxy inlay, and then also mounting it to a sled so that we could take it on and off. In this video, what we're going to cover is the actual carving of the design. So we're going to go through three different what you would call color epoxy layers. The first one is a clear layer that we put down just to prevent bleed of the black, which is our next color, into the wood cookie. If anybody's not experienced that with painting or others, when you carve wood, the epoxy color or the paint color can actually bleed out into the fibers of the wood and mess up your design. So we are going to put a clear coat first so that we avoid that problem. The next one we will do is we will actually take time to carve the black design into the clear epoxy that we just previously poured. Once we have that in there and it's all hardened, we'll pour the final color, which is the silver. Now I'm going to go ahead, and you can fast forward if you think you already have all the information, but I'm going to go ahead and walk through my mixing up and talking about what I'm thinking about as I'm mixing each color. So as I mix the clear color, I'll talk to you about the epoxy that I use and the methodology I use for measuring it now with the metering pumps. Then I'll talk about, when I get into the black, how I go about measuring that out, which will be a very similar measurement. And we'll talk about how I determine that I've got enough black in the epoxy. And then we'll talk about other characteristics when I talk about the silver. Now, if you know enough about mixing epoxies and colors and all of that, you might want to fast forward through those. In any event, I thought it would be worth the time because I answer several of the questions I get in other communications from people when I do live shows and others about what kind of epoxy I use, why I'm doing what I'm doing, etc. With that, I hope you enjoy what you watch, and if you do, please give me a thumbs up or like. If you want to see the finishing up of this series, which will be the final surfacing of the epoxy, then go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already so you'll know when it's coming out. With that, I hope you enjoy the video on how I'm going about carving and pouring the epoxy. It will open up with me carving the clear color. Okay, now this quarter inch can make quite a mess. It can chip up a lot of stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and put the dust collector on for this one. So there we have it. We have the first carve done. This will all be filled with clear epoxy to prevent bleeding of the color into the other parts of the board. Well, I'm preparing to pour. I'm using Moss LV with medium hardener. Those of you that have been following me know that I normally do my pours in a separate room in the house up in my office. But this cookie is so big, I don't feel like lifting it on and off my CNC and taking it there. So I've made sure that it's nice and level on my CNC. I'm going to go ahead and at least make the first attempt, and if that works, I'll probably do the others of pouring it right there on the CNC. Hopefully I don't make a mess out of things. In any event, that's the plan. So it says it'll take a little over 8 ounces of epoxy. So I'm getting ready to mix that up. I'm using the Moss LV with the pumps. I want to make sure my pump is primed still, so I'm going to go ahead and try to see if it flows. It does, so that's a good thing. And see if that's true with my epoxy. Yeah. So now that's a 1-to-1, and that's basically what you do is you pump the same number of resin as you do the hardener. And so with that, we will go ahead and start pumping it. I've got this paper so the drips can go on the paper. And I'll get up close to 8 ounces with the resin right here, and then I'll switch over to the hardener. 1, I got to remember to count them. 2, 3. Also, I should have some baby wipes handy when I'm doing this, so I'm going to go get some. I've got these large baby wipes handy. So now I do have 4, and we're going to go to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. As you see me wait for it to come up on the stroke, you're supposed to do full strokes so the metering works. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, so now we're going to switch over to here. 20 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right, that has me up to 8 ounces. So I think we're good to pour after we stir this up. So now it's time to mix it up, get it good and mixed, and we'll see how much overage I have this time. I always add a little extra to the calculation. So it gets cloudy and then it starts to clear up, stirring for a couple minutes. Now this one's not such a challenge because if I'm short or anything, I just mix up some more clear. It's the colors that you got to be more careful of. For those of you wondering about me pouring in the garage, I'll have to not do any woodworking or anything to keep the dust from kicking up. I've got my air filter, my air purifier that I can turn on. And I have a mini split in my garage that has heat and cold controls. So I can keep it at a nice 70 degrees in here, even if it gets cold. Plus, I live in California, so it doesn't get that cold. But so we got it all stirred up. I'll turn the cameras around and get ready to pour. I have my cleaning wipes close by. My one concern right at the moment is that I don't know how porous this cookie's end grain is. It's looking like this. I might need a little more here. It'll be close. Okay, so it looks like we had enough. Set this aside for just a second. Put this in there. Wipe my hands off. Now it originally called for this. The spreadsheet that I had originally called for 6, and I had a 25% overage. And looks like that was the right thing to do. I'll watch this a little bit because some may seep in. I'll try to pour a little more in, but as long as it's soaked, that's okay because this is a clear coat, and the only purpose of this coat is to pre-coat this carving so that the color, when I put it in there, doesn't bleed out and cause wicking into the actual wood. So as long as it gets a nice coat, that's all that matters. So now I'm going to go get my torch, and then we'll torch this thing for the first time. All right, we'll put the first torch on it. So far, everything's looking good. I see the bubbles, but we'll take care of that real quick. Okay, that cleared up all the bubbles for the first round. It's all looking pretty good. All the corners are full of the saw blade. The text all looks full. Everything looks good. I'll come back in 15-20 minutes and apply a torch again. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes, and now I'm going to put a second torch on it. I don't really see hardly any bubbles, so this may be the last time. Notice when I put the torch on here that I'm moving it continuously and not keeping it in one location. I think this will probably end up being the last time. This looks pretty good. I hardly saw any bubbles at all. So I'll check it again in about 20 minutes Probably won't have to put the torch on it though. At this time, I'm ready to carve the black. The clear is hardened. Everything's been put in place. And so we'll start, and this time, in the past, I've always started with the V-bit, but based on the recommendations from the manufacturer at Rip Precision Tools, I'm going to start with the larger clearance bit. I'm going to try a new one that I've gotten recently, and that's this 3/16 inch O flute to see how that works. I've heard some good things, so I'm going to give that a shot, and that's what you'll be seeing me put on it initially. Okay, now I'll zero this 3/16 inch bit. Remember, we always zero at the same spot. I've got an X right here, so I'm headed over there. Remember that the clear epoxy coat was cut to a depth of 0.15 inches. All of my other cuts will be 0.125 inches to leave a little clearance there for the epoxy sealing. So this one will be 0.125 as compared to 0.15. That 16th inch or 3/16 inch O flute did a really nice, sweet, clean job on this epoxy. Really happy with the job it did. Look how clean that cut is. Nice and clean. So now we're going to switch over to the 1/8 inch bit. This is a 1/8 inch upcut. Now normally I wouldn't use this many clearance bits. I'm actually going to use a 16th inch too, but I've got such a large project with this 24 inch span, close to 24 inches. It's covering a lot of areas, so I needed to use more clearance bits than normal, especially down in here. My 1/8 inch won't get it, so my 1/16 inch will have to clear a lot of this. Once again, reminder, we're zeroing here on the X. Same spot every time. Okay, that's our second clearance pass. Now we're going to go for the third clearance pass, which is 1/16 inch, and I'm a little nervous about this one, to be honest. I'm going to get a close-up picture of the 1/8 inch upcut bit and how the epoxy just wrapped around it as we're cutting it. I'm getting ready to cut with this 16th inch bit. I've used it once or twice before. It always makes me nervous because I've used a couple 16th inch bits in the past and I snapped them right away. This one's long, so it's got some flex in the tip. And I'm going to try to nurse it and see how we do. Okay, now it's time to change the V-bit. This little 16 inch bit did a great job. X marks the spot. Okay, we're at the point now we're getting ready to pour black. Everything's cleaned. I've leveled the slab and blown it all off with air. So now all I have to do is mix up the black epoxy and pour it in, and then we'll wait for that to dry and harden, and probably tomorrow time frame I'll go ahead and cut and pour the silver. We're ready for the black pour, so I've got everything carved out. Now I'm going to mix up the black in a different cup than I mixed yesterday. We want about the same amount, about 8 ounces. That'll probably give me a little extra. I don't want to take a chance on being short. And this is going to be easy black because I'm just going to actually mix up with a solid color with Epoxy black, and I'm not going to put any mica powder or anything else. So once again, I'll do a quick test to make sure the pumps are primed. That looks good. That looks good. We'll start mixing. And each one took about 20 pumps yesterday, so imagine it'll be similar today. 1, 20, 20. Yeah, this is a straightforward mixture. Nothing complicated about this one because it's just a straight flat black. It is 8 ounces, so we'll put a little bit in there. Everything's looking nice and clear. I think I've got that mixed up nice and good. Now we'll put some black. I will count the number of drops that I'm putting in. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm stirring up the nice black. With black, you usually don't have to worry too much about it being translucent. What I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm pulling it up and making sure I can't see the stick through it. So I'm stirring it, then lifting it, and that looks pretty good. I don't think I'm going to need anything more. I'll just put one more drop for good sake. Looks good. I can feel the epoxy actually starting to get warm, so it's time to get it poured. So because these sharp corners on these blades can get a little tricky, I'm going to go ahead and check the blade tips. You use a little toothpick to be sure they've got the epoxy in them. And I don't have to do a lot of stirring with this one because, like I said, it's solid black and I'm not trying to get any swirl in it. So I think we've got about everything covered now. Now the next step is to put the torch to it. Take another look, make sure I filled everything. Looks like I could use a little more in that A right there. Looking for ones that might be a little low because when the epoxy starts to cure, it's going to shrink a little bit. I don't really see any bubbles right at the moment here, but I'll come by in about 15 minutes and re-put the torch to it. So we're getting ready to start the last color of carving today. This was black. The next color is going to be a silver that goes into a saw blade, and that will be the last color, and then we'll surface it. Check my Z0 just to make sure something hasn't changed. No, everything looks good. This is a 3/16 inch O-flute bit. So we have the 3/16 inch bit carved in this, and I'm going to change bits, and then we'll do the V-bit. Baby's still sharp, no broken tips. I always do a quick inspection of my V-bits ahead of time. The V-bits are the ones you kind of have to baby, these sharp ones. That's right, time to head back to the X over here, where I've been consistently Zing. Now it's time to clean this up and clean up the area to get all the dust and everything away so that we can do an epoxy pour. Sometimes little slivers of material or something can be found in there. So once I get all that done, then I'll vacuum again, then I'll blow everything off with air. We're now at the point where we want to mix up the silver. It's going to take 2 ounces of silver. Let me get some gloves on. I'm mixing over a paper still, same paper I have for the last couple days. And this is going to take just a little over 2 ounces, so I can use one of these cups, which is the normal mixing cup. I have my baby wipe here in case of spills or needing to wipe up things, some close by, stir stick, addition stick for the epoxy. And so we're ready to rock and roll. We start by adding in the pumps of epoxy, and I want to go to 2 ounces, which on this cup is right about here. So if I go a little over, that's okay, because I'd rather have more than less. I should have plenty in there. And so now I'm going to mix this up. Remember, scrub the sides of contaminants and stuff. I actually think I want to put one more squirt of each. I'm nervous about one. I get a little nervous about being short because of this being a color. Okay, it's looking nice and clear. Looks like it's a good mix. So now I'm going to be using this ME2, Mixol ME2, which is what Shane Peters recommends as the best metallic looking epoxies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drops. Let's see how that looks. So I'm mixing this up, mixing the color in, and then I'll check the opaqueness by pulling it up with my stick and looking at how opaque it is or isn't when I look at my stick. So I'm looking at it, and it still looks kind of opaque to me when I move it up and I move it along. So I'm going to put some more silver in there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 drops. Okay, let's pull it up. And now it's looking thicker, less transparent. I'm trying to see it on the stick, and if I can see through it, I'm going to add one more drop because I can. I really don't want to take a chance on it being transparent. So basically that was 12 drops. Let me write that down on my paper in case I have to mix more. 12 drops. Okay, that's looking pretty opaque. I think I'll be good there. And now I'm just gonna put just a very pinch of this Firedots Night, which is a kind of a charcoal, just so when I swirl, I'll have a little swirl action there. I want to add very little. That's it. Just a couple drops for swirl action only. Okay, we got it all mixed up, and it's time to take it over and actually pour it. Now we'll go ahead and start pouring the silver. Remember that epoxy shrinks, so I try to keep it a little bulging on the outer edge of it. So actually it looks like we're going to have just enough for my comfort level, so I'm glad I overmixed. So that's looking good. Once again, I will use my toothpick to make sure that each of the blade edges have a nice amount in there. Again, just making sure that the blade sharp edges are well. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to swirl in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little swirl all around this blade track. That's what you see me doing here. And I'll do this about every 15 minutes for the first half hour to 45 minutes. Depending on how fast this epoxy starts to set up. Just taking and using the end of this toothpick to try to swirl the blade color. All right, and we all know what comes next, right? That is the torch. That's it for the next 15 minutes to 20 minutes, and then I'll come back and I'll do another quick stir. That's pretty much it for how we went through carving and pouring the epoxy pours. I hope you picked up an item or two as you were looking through. I tried to answer some of the common questions. Common question I get is, how do I know when I've put enough epoxy in? Really, it's by feel and by experience, and the methodology I demonstrated for ensuring you have enough color is the pulling up of the epoxy. You saw me do that, and looking at the color of the epoxy through the stick, or actually what I'm looking for is the stick through the epoxy. If I can see the stick in the epoxy, then I haven't got the color dark enough. It's not opaque enough. So that's what you want to do when you're looking at the color. Another thing I demonstrated was the process of popping bubbles and not keeping the torch in any one location, because you can cook the epoxy moving it across quickly. I do that about every 15 to 20 minutes. And in the case of the blade, you'll notice that I took a little toothpick and I stirred that toothpick into the corners of that blade to prevent air bubbles from forming in that. Then when I wanted to do the swirl in the silver, I'd put a little touch of a different color from the Mix-All Silver, and I was actually swirling that with that little silver with that toothpick every 15 to 20 minutes for the first hour. In any event, I hope you picked up a tip or two during the video. And if you liked it and feel it's worthy, please give me a like. If you want to know when I'm going to do the actual surfacing of this epoxy, which is next, and it should happen more quickly than this one did. I had some personal issues I was trying to deal with in the last month. And so if you want to know when that video comes out, just hit subscribe, and then you'll actually see me surface off all those colors and sand and finish this video. You'll also be made aware of any other future videos that I make on tips and tricks of using the Vectric software, laser software, or whatever suits my needs. If you have something you'd like to see, go ahead and give me a comment. Always appreciate comments. They're helpful. With that, I hope you have a wonderful life and that things go smoothly for you in the near and distant future. Have a great day until we meet again in this medium. Thank you.